As Dad rose with the bishop as the bishop's lawyer, the chancellor for the district, they had what they called convocations, a meeting of all of the lay people that were able to attend, like at a convention each year, and they had meetings and discussions, and some of it was very wonderful. It brought a great deal of positive uh, interaction with my mom and dad. They would sit around in a circle with the couples and talk about how they could be more kind to each other and work out their conflicts and difficulties. But as Dad got more and more status with the members in Eastern Oregon, as a lawyer, he was more articulate probably than many of the Episcopalians who had small businesses and farms and so on. But there came a vacancy in our local church, and Dad was very involved in interviewing and choosing the replacement. And they chose a guy who had not gone to seminary, but he was very affable and verbal and charming. And Dad was imbued with the idea that we should get more people into the church. There's a joke: you shouldn't speak badly of the Episcopal Church because you shouldn't talk bad about the dying. The Episcopal Church has been dying for years because they just don't have a very big base. They tend to attract people who are a little more conservative, maybe a little more affluent, and there aren't that many affluent people around. So Dad wanted to get more people in, and he got the new minister to promise before they hired him that he would visit every family in the local church there in the first year he was there. Well, as the year wore on, I think my dad may have begun to get a little tired of just how much BS this new minister was peddling, but whatever, he began to wonder if he was keeping his word about visiting every church, every family in the church in the first year. So Dad, having been a former prosecutor, knew how to investigate, so he went around and started asking, particularly members of the vestry, has he been to your house? No. Has he been to your house? No. So then, rather than going to the minister and saying, look, you promised, now you're going to have to come and tell me who you visited. And in your second year, you're going to get the job done you promised in the first. Instead, he set a trap and went to a vestry meeting, and there with all the vestrymen there, which probably was not more than 6 or 8 people, but he said, has he been to your house? No. Has he been to your house? And then he pretty much said to the minister, you're a liar, right in front of the whole vestry. Well, that, of course, didn't go over that well. But then after that, instead of Dad going and patching it up with the minister, and instead of him confiding in the bishop what was going on, and the bishop telling him, now you're going to have to work this out, just like we work things out with ministers when there's a problem, he didn't deal with it. He just stopped going to church in his local church and limiting his church activity to riding around the district as a big deal with the bishop. Well, comes 1966 rolled around, and Dad's had been appointed by the governor in 1960 to be a district court judge, which was going to be his glide out at the end of his career. He was 60 years old when he went on the bench, and so he had to run, though, in 66, and there was a guy in a law firm there in town who wasn't very productive, and his partners talked him into running against Dad. It's a whole nother story about why Dad was somewhat unpopular in the town, but he ran, and then like 20 people out of that church signed a letter that they published in the local newspaper saying why they thought Dad should be replaced. And it was along the line that he thought he was too good for them. And he lost the election. So at age 65, he was dumped out on the street, so to speak, with no pension. That judge job he had didn't have a pension. Soon thereafter, the legislature created one for district court judges, but it didn't at the time. So there he was, not having kept his fences mended with the local congregation. And it was always a mystery to me how this wonderful, seemingly very powerful personality of the bishop had not told his good friend, if you're going to be my chancellor, you're going to have to go to church and you're going to have to patch it up with a local minister. So that was the beginning of the end of my father's religious experience. He quit going to church, and when he was dying, I was there with him a lot during particularly the last month of his life, and he didn't say anything about his relationship to God or heaven. He started saying about 10 days before he died, his voice was becoming very hoarse and he was starting to slide into a coma, and he started saying, "Where did I come from? Where am I going?" And just about the time he was really doing that, two of our friends that are Indians showed up. They'd heard he was sick, and they were there with a salmon to give him. And Mother shot out of the house to go down to the garden because she'd been overly taxed. That was before the days of hospice, and she wasn't getting enough help. But when she came back from the garden, Dad never again said those things. And a few years later, I called Mary Settler, who was the woman that was there with her husband, and I said, "What did you say to Dad?" She said, "Well, I don't remember exactly on that occasion, but I can tell you what we said to people under those circumstances. We tell them, we came from the wind, and we came from the rocks, and we came from the river, and that's where we're going back to. That's where we're going back to." And that gave Dad all he needed. He never complained or wondered out loud again.